Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. Today we're taking a look at a few cards that are currently trending on the market because of upcoming changes to the format. Now, as I'm sure you guys all know by now, we have the Malice and Ryzeal themes that will be coming out in crossover breakers. But looking into next year, we have a lot of really cool stuff that's set to come out between the Blue Eyes structure deck and a ton of older archetypes getting support in Terminal World 2. Now, even though a lot can change between now and then, and the formats definitely won't look the same, players are still looking to pick up key cards from the themes that they want to play as early as possible so that they are prepared for whatever comes, resulting in early price spikes that we see reflected in the market. Now, let's get started. Kicking things off, we'll start with a card that spiked fairly recently. It's Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid Neo Tempest Terahertz. Now, this card is one of the few Link 5 monsters in the game, and it has a few different interesting effects. It stops your opponent from activating effects in the battle phase, it lets you send Cybers monsters from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, and then this card gains the attributes of the monster sent, and it can attack multiple times depending on how many attributes this card has. Now, this card is used as a boss monster in the Malice deck, making use of your many Malice bodies as link fodder to climb into this card, and the cards that Terahertz can dump directly from the extra deck to the graveyard end up being various forms of disruption. Malice is definitely expected to be a top tier contender going into the next format. Even though in the OCG it is still a very clear step behind Ryzeal, I think that the general consensus is that here in the TCG, the two decks will be closer to one another in terms of performance than a lot of players are expecting, so it's going to be a deck that you'll want to keep an eye on. Now, price-wise, Terahertz was actually a really cheap card. This card was originally in Maze of Memories as an Ultra and Collector's Rare, but then it got a reprint as a Secret Rare in the 2024 tins. Now, initially after that tin reprint, the Secret and Ultra printings were down at only $1 or so, but just recently we've seen the card shoot back up to around $5 to $6 a piece, with players expecting it to be used by a meta-relevant deck. Then with the Collector's Rares, this card was down at between $40 to $50. We now see the card at $75 lowest on TCG Player, with more sold listings around $65 to $70 in that range. If you guys do want to play Malice like I do, then you should definitely make sure that you pick up a copy of this card now, because with its recent reprint in the tins, I don't see it being reprinted again for the next little while. Alright, another Link monster that we want to keep an eye on because of Malice, this one is Lingaro. Now, this card is sort of like the cousin of the now banned Lingaro. This card you can make with any level 4 or lower Cybers monster. While it's on the field, you can tribute this card to negate an opponent's trap card. It does have another effect that isn't too relevant for most players. It's going to be related to the Adignister theme, but that first effect is really good. It allows you to play through cards like Infinite Impermanence or Dominus Impulse if you are able to keep Lingaro on the board. Obviously, we don't have the Malice deck out here in the TCG quite yet, but Lingaro is a card that I believe they are choosing to run in OCG builds, so I would expect at least early lists here in the TCG to be running Lingaro in the extra deck as well. Fortunately, Lingaro does have two different printings. It was an ultra rare originally from Ignition Assault, and then it got a super rare reprint in one of the tins. Now here, the ultra rare is the printing that has jumped, only being $1 or $2 before, but now coming in at $7 to $8 per copy, while the super rare is still unchanged in terms of price at under $1 each. This is a card that I wouldn't really care too much about maxing out the rarity on. I think it's definitely a better call to just go ahead and pick up the super if you just need a copy to play with, and look to move your ultra rare copies while they are at this hyped up price. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. I'm also super excited to let you guys know that we have our Black Friday sale currently live on the site. That's right, all of your favorite sleeves and accessories are discounted now right through to Black Friday. If you want to try out some sleeves for the first time, now is the perfect time to order them before your next big tournament. Or if you've ordered them before but need to restock, we've got you. Whether you're a casual or competitive player, I'm sure that you'll find something perfect for you over at MSTmerch.com. The next card we have here is a pretty cool one. It's Primate Lordly Load. Now this is something that we discussed in the past. We've seen it used as a small engine in different decks, like to bring out Evil Swarm Heliotrope in Ryzeal over in a couple of lists in the OCG, or Alexandrite Dragon in Dragon Link, but it hasn't really been a prominent part of the meta. However, in the OCG, it does seem that the Primate cards have been really useful in the Blue Eyes deck. The Primate engine gets a new level 4 monster in Supreme Darkness called Primate Another Barrel. It's able to search for Lordly Load, and it's also something that can be used to make the Blue Eyes Link 1 monster. On top of that, you can have access to Drill Beam as an interruption, and use Load's effect to get bodies onto the field as well, and it seems that the engines work really well together over in the OCG so far. The lists that have come out so far do seem to run 3 Lordly Load in the main deck, and I'm certain that that's why we've seen Load spike in price over the last few days. Just last week, this card was only around $8, but over the weekend, we've seen the secret rares more than double in price, as they're coming in at around $17 to $18 each. Now, of course, just because the deck is good in the OCG, that doesn't mean it'll be good in the TCG, but at the very least, this is giving us something of a framework to work with for when the Blue Eyes cards are released here in the TCG, and with Supreme Darkness coming at the end of January, and the Blue Eyes deck in February, it seems like the cards are a pretty perfect pairing. Keep in mind that the Blue Eyes deck is going to be extremely popular, not just because it's Blue Eyes, but also because it can be easily built with the structure deck, and that's naturally going to mean that there's going to be more demand for Lordly Load and the other engines that are going to be used alongside the strategy. That said, I would still wait a little bit for Load to cool off in price a bit, maybe down to around the $12 to $13 mark. Hopefully, this is a card that I would definitely be trying to actively pick up for around $10 in cash, maybe $12 to $13 in trades. The next card up is Dominus Purge. So I started looking at cards for this market watch on Sunday morning, and this card actually got bought out at some point while I was out at the Pokemon Go event during the day on Sunday, because it's now Sunday night when I'm recording this, and this card's price is much higher than I remembered. Anyways, Dominus Purge is a really cool card from the Infinite Forbidden. It's kind of like a watered down Ash where it only stops searching, but it can be activated from hand if your opponent controls a card. The thing is that if you activate this card from your hand, you can't use Dark, Water, or Fire monster effects for the rest of the duel. So with Snake Eye, Azumina, Fire King being the best deck, they run Dominus Impulse. All the Snake Eye variants run Dominus Impulse if they're going to run a Dominus card. None of the really strong meta decks recently have been able to run Purge. I think the closest thing was Melodious, but they were never really like a meta deck. They've always just kind of been on the outside looking in. However, Purge is a really good card if your deck is able to use it. It's like having access to extra copies of Ash. It can destroy the card if you have Imperm or another trap in your graveyard, and this card doesn't play into Triple Tactics Talent or Triple Tactics Thrust. I think that the reason this card is jumping up in price now is because Blue Eyes is able to run this card, and it has emerged as a solid tier 1.5, tier 2 contender over in the OCG. Much like Melodious, they play a bunch of light monsters, and you're probably going to be fine if you activate Purge from your hand. It might stop 1 or 2 of your cards, but you have so many other options that are available. Now, price-wise, do take this with a grain of salt because I'm recording pretty much right after the buyout happened. The cheapest secrets online right now are about $35 to $40. This was literally an $18 to $20 card this morning, so yeah, this might change a bit by the time that you guys actually watch this part. The QCRs haven't actually moved yet. They're still at $70 each, but those will definitely be targeted next within the next week or so, maybe even by the time you guys see this. It doesn't make sense for the secrets to literally be like 50% of the QCR's price, so definitely expect the QCRs to hit well over $100 each by the end of the week here. Next up is another trap card that players seem to be looking at. It's Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon. Now this card is, in my opinion, a really crazy trap card. Its main problem is that it's a trap card, right? So it's a lot slower than a lot of other options in the game. It basically flips everything on the field face down, and anything that's still face up afterwards, the owner of that card has to send it to the graveyard. Now this card was mainly used by Labyrinth for a little bit there. It's seen a bit of niche usage as a tech card against various strategies over the course of the last couple of years. Now going into next format, players are looking at tech options to use against Ryzeal and Malice, and it seems that players are looking to use either Karma Cannon or Book of Eclipse. Now functionally they do very similar things, they each have their pros and cons. Karma Cannon doesn't potentially give your opponent a draw, it can't be negated by Ash Blossom, and it can clear Link monsters as well. But the really big problem is just that it's a trap card, so it can only be used when you're going first, whereas Book of Eclipse can potentially be useful going first or second. Nevertheless, Karma Cannon can be very disruptive to a lot of decks. It can flip the Ryziel monsters face down before you Xyz, or you can flip Duo Drive face down before it can activate its effect and hopefully stop the Ryziel turn. And then even against Malice, if they do have Link monsters on the field, you basically get to send all of them to the graveyard for free. Karma Cannon is definitely a card for you guys to keep an eye on. It has just 2 printings as a secret and ultra rare, each of those coming in at around the $10 mark. Not up a crazy amount, it's still up a couple dollars. I remember this card being about 7 to 8. With only 2 printings, I think that the card definitely has the potential to continue this upward trend, though we do have to be wary of the card being reprinted. This is a card that I would want to actively go out, try to pick up just a playset of it to have available for your own use, just in case it does start to see a lot of meta play, but at the same time look to move your extra copies of the card just in case that reprint does drop unexpectedly. Alright, this one feels like a really random one. It's Zoroa, the Magistus of Flame. So this is something we haven't talked about in a while. I think we did look at this card a little while ago, back when Exo Sister was really popular and people were talking about this card. It never really did all that much. Zoroa is basically like a Wolfbark. It's a level 4 spellcaster tuner that can special summon a level 4 spellcaster from your hand or graveyard with its effect negated. The idea is that you're setting up a level 8 synchro play where you can make the synchro version of Zoroa and then equip itself with a Magistus extra deck monster and floodgate your opponent out of that specific type of monster. So we have some new Magistus support cards confirmed to be coming in Premium Pack 2025 in the OCG. For reference, the ones from 2024 came in Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge, so we can expect something similar for 2025 with Terminal World 2 coming out, and I think the new Magistus stuff actually looks pretty cool. They basically have a Poplar and a quick play spell card that can cheat out a Magistus monster from your hand or deck. Because of that, we've seen a bit of a price spike with Zoroa. I'm pretty sure that this card has been completely forgotten by Konami because up until now this card has just 1 printing from back in Genesis Impact, though it will likely be reprinted in the Battles of Legends set that the cards get imported in. Zoroa used to be a $3 to $5 card, but it has shot up in price with the reveal of the new support. The cheapest one on TCG Player right now is around $14 to $15, but when we look at sold listings, most of the sold listings are around the $10 mark, maybe a little bit higher. As cool as the new Magistus cards are, I don't see them doing anything in terms of meta relevance, so this is another card that you guys are probably going to want to look to offload while it's so hyped up. And finally, the last card we're looking at for today is Brilliant Fusion. So this is actually a card that is currently banned in the TCG. It was a really abusable card back in the Monarch deck from around 2016, where you could make Seraphinite and get 2 normal summons, while also using the Seraphinite body as tribute fodder or to make Constellar Pleiades. Now, Brilliant Fusion is actually limited to 1 over in the OCG, but despite being legal there, it doesn't really do anything to impact the format at all. Now, in Terminal World 2 in the OCG, there are some cool new Gem Knight cards that are coming out, and they seem good, they just don't really seem unfair or broken, which is why I think most people don't really think they'll be all that meta relevant. However, I did see a couple of early Gem Knight lists running around online that are apparently doing something in the OCG, so maybe if the next couple of ban lists go the right way, the deck could possibly do something. However, I think what we all have to consider first is the possibility of Brilliant Fusion being unbanned. The game is very different from back in 2016, and I just don't think it would be as insane of a card in today's game as it was back then. Despite that, the market here is really predictable, so Brilliant Fusion being unbanned would definitely cause all versions of it to shoot up in price ridiculously right away, and I think some people are starting to pay attention to the cards, hoping that it will be unbanned soon. Right now we have the Ultimate Rares at around $40 to $45 lowest on TCG Player, which is up from the $20 to $25 that they were at before. And then with the Secret Rares, they were at $1, they're now worth a couple of bucks, nothing crazy, still worth paying attention to. We also have a couple of different super printings that are still right at around $1. Cards like this are basically the reason that people have binders of banned cards just waiting and ready to be offloaded. Make sure you guys know where your copies are ahead of time before this card gets unbanned, so that when it does get unbanned, you can be ready to offload them right away. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely excited to see how the format is going to shake up. I'm kind of sick of seeing Snake Eye everywhere, even though I am playing it. Like, I am going to be jumping on the Malice train, so I'm super excited for Crossover Breakers to be coming out, which should be in just a couple of weeks or so. So be sure to stay tuned for more content related to Ryziel and Malice and Crossover Breakers and everything. Tom is going to be playing Ryziel. We should be doing a live game soon, showcasing what those decks can do as well. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST MST.TV.